Hey everybody, John here from the sports department, going over the Group D 3 games in 1 day slate. This one for me is probably the worst of the four slates that we've had as far as the 3 in 1 day slates go. Um, Kind of excited to get onto the quarterfinal slates, which should be a lot more exciting with a little bit more edge built in than this one anyway. I did think a couple of these slates were pretty good. I thought last night's was good. I won last night, which was nice. I thought the Group A slate was pretty good. Group B I was not as big of a fan of, and this one I think is the worst. And part of that is coming from we're dealing with similar odds of some of the other matchups that we've had before, like pretty heavy favorites in almost every matchup other than this UOL and Flyquest one. The biggest problem here is that the salaries are not allowing for you to mix up the lineups nearly as much. Like there's no jungle captains of the favorites, which was something that at least when they existed, they could eat up salary, or they could eat up ownership, and you could go somewhere else and try to get an advantage. And the problem is, without them available to eat up ownership, you're left with a lot less options to build, which just overchalks the slate quite a bit. The options you're really dealing with here, if you're going to play the favorites, I guess I'll rehash the same thing I've been doing for the last 3 videos. These ones are a little bit shorter. I've shown how to go ahead and build projections for a slate like this by going to the esports department. Let's just do it again real quick. I know a lot of people probably have watched all 4 videos and have seen this before, but just to show anybody who might be new to this video, you just go to the esports department, check out the individual matchups. So you have DRX right here playing against Top Esports. If you think DRX is going to win, take their winning projections, go to Top Esports versus DRX, take the losing projections, add them to your little table, and then you can come up with a projection set for the day, depending on what you think the ending results of these matches are going to be. I, for the video, just do the favorites. So every match I have the favorite as winning in the projection set that I created for the video. So if you're playing the favorites, you can play top captains or support captains, basically. If you're playing any decent-sized GPP, I think top captains are going to be a waste of your time. They have to be completely over-owned on this slate, just given what the options are. I just don't think there's enough upside on playing the top captains. You're probably looking at a very, very heavy split if they win, and I don't think they win often enough to justify how small that split is going to be. You could try the support captains and hope that supports have a big day versus top laners. If Yuyanjia and Keria have a big day, maybe 369 has a bad day, or Doran has a bad day, you could get something with the support captains. People don't like playing those. So I could definitely see that being something that could come through and maybe has a little bit less ownership. Then you're left with things like you can play Karsa with 4 top esports players if you play UOL Team. You can play Pyosik with 4 top esports players if you play UOL Team. You can play 3-3s as long as you play UOL or Flyquest. You can play a 3-3 with Pyosik or Karsa as your captain. Or you can play 4 DRX with Fly or UOL Team as a possibility as well. I think this is with Pyosik captain. But still not a lot of options compared to what we were dealing with the last couple days, which just makes, if you're going to sit out a slate, honestly, this is probably the slate to sit out on. There's just not a lot going on. Your best things, if you think that one of these teams can predict, if you can try to predict an upset, if you think Flyquest could get a win against DRX or TES, or if you think that UOL could pull out a win against one of those two, and then that team would also win this matchup, because I think we're pretty even that these two teams could definitely beat each other. Flyquest or UOL, very capable of winning that matchup. So if either one of them gets a win anywhere else on the slate, then that's going to throw the entire slate into upheaval. So if you think that either one of these teams is capable of getting a win somewhere else, maybe that is a strategy you can build around. If you formulate your table down here based on the idea that either one of these teams wins 2 games, you're going to create some lineups that aren't going to be super heavily owned. So that's probably the thing to do today. It's not likely, as you can see from the odds, that either one of those teams gets a second win, but if either one of them does get a second win, you can get some lineups that can really win some money. So that feels like probably the way to go to me. You can try getting some of these kinds of things in there, but I'm guessing you're going to see very high ownership on everything that's involved in this. So it's just not a great slate, to be honest with you. It does come up with a kind of interesting optimal lineup when you do the projections this way. So this is favorites winning every match. The first optimal that it creates is Santorin, Karsa with Santorin, and then 4 TES players, Doran at the top lane and DRX Team. There is a little bug in the Labs builder right now that has Dragon X as a member of Flyquest, but I don't think it makes a difference. It still has the correct price and the right projection from me. So it's a 4 TES with Santorin in the jungle and Doran and Dragon X. Part of the reason for that is this is by far the bloodiest group, and it's a group full of teams that give up points even when they win. So you can see like Flyquest's projections, even going 1 and 2, are pretty good. They're projecting Wild Turtle for 70 points, Power of Evil for 76, Santorin for 60, 65.5, Solo for 56. So whoever wins that Flyquest UOL matchup is actually projected to do pretty well comparatively because of the amount of points that Top Esports and DRX give up when they win. So it does actually create some kind of interesting lineups. Let's have a look real quick at the top 150 and see what kind of stuff starts showing up towards the top of the list. See what it generates for us. So it does like the 369 captain up towards the top. That's the kind of lineup I think I would avoid, the 369 captain. It projects very well, which we knew that it would, given that it has all Top Esports and DRX players. But that's the kind of lineup I think you're going to see way too much ownership on. This Santorin one feels like a good spot. Karsa with Santorin, Doran, and the other 3 members of TES. That one makes a lot of sense. That's a spot where that lineup's probably not going to have insane ownership. Wow, the third lineup on there is actually just double Flyquest players with Knight Captain. So if it's already projecting that, even thinking that Flyquest only wins 1 game, that even makes me more likely to think that trying to mix things up a little bit more on this slate is definitely of high value. Yuyanjia captain coming in 6th, Doran captain in 5th. Very mixed up. And in a lot of the other ones, when we've done generated the top 150, when we would see the 369 captain, for instance, it would be like here and then boom, boom, boom. The next 3 lineups would all be the 369 captain variations, but this one's much more mixed up. It likes Knight captain with the 3 Flyquest players as a possible at number 4. Knight with Chovy, Wild Turtle, Solo, and then 2 others NTES. That's interesting. Yeah, this is maybe slightly more interesting than we would have thought, given what it's pumping out here. It's basically saying you got to get on that 4 TES train. I'd be interested as well to run the same 150, except under the assumption that DRX beats Top Esports in the last match of the day, because I bet you'd get some very interesting lineups that way too, and that I think is a very possible scenario, one that should be looked into. Santorin looks like he's projecting very well compared to the other junglers in a way that's putting him in an awful lot of lineups. When we look at the ownerships over here on the right, we're getting Jackeylove as our most owned player, followed by Knight, Yuyanjia, Karsa. So it's not playing a lot of 369 at all. He's only 22%. Prefers trying to run Doran or Solo, is very highly owned. Not a lot of Chovy. Pyosik very, very low owned. I'm guessing Pyosik might be kind of the big edge today, the way that I thought Peanut could provide an edge yesterday, in the sense that it looks like it's trying to fill Santorin in quite a bit, and it's playing Karsa a fair bit, leaving not a lot of Pyosik, and he's definitely a carry jungler that can have a huge day today. So having him in your lineup seems like they could be an edge provider. Keria, Santorin's just pretty high. The UOL player's not making much of a showing, given how high the Flyquest players project if they win only 1 match. If you change your setup to assume that UOL wins the match against Flyquest, that will definitely change everything up. I'm guessing you'll get an awful lot of UOL in your lineups. They're pretty cheap, and they should take the Flyquest spot of very, very high scoring in a 1-2. But that's pretty much what we've got going on today. It's pretty tough to avoid. I wouldn't play any of the lineups, like I said, the top captains, the things that are basically just TES and DRX, especially given how many points they give up in wins. I think you're better off trying to run some combination of these types of strategies. It seems like a good slate for MME instead of trying to find a single entry lineup. A good spot to just mix in a bunch of kind of one-offs and things like that. that's definitely what the projections are saying, and that makes the most sense to me given what we're going to see out of this. For sure, I think Top Esports will be the highest owned team, followed by DRX, followed by Flyquest, and then UOL at the bottom. I think you just have to make some sort of small modification to your setup to try to figure out some things that might be lower owned. Whether you want to predict UOL to beat Flyquest, which I think is reasonable, predicting DRX to beat Top Esports at the end of the day, I think is a good decision. Any kind of upset in there somewhere, just one thing to give you a slightly more an under-owned version of the setup that we've created for the video. The setup we created for the video, I think, is what most people will assume is going to happen, and so I think you probably want to move away from that a little bit when making your lineups. But that's all I've got for today, guys. It's just not a very interesting slate. I think the best of fives will give us some much more interesting stuff to talk about. This one's just not super exciting, but it's been a good last couple days for the esports department. I know Brown Dog won pretty much everything last night, and then I won the $15 along with him. So yeah, some good results for people figuring out how to play these slates and navigating them, and hopefully that'll continue, and if we get more of these slates in the future, we'll know how to handle them a little bit better. So I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of the day.